Today on Look Back Laughs, we look back at the career of the great Chris Rock. Boom! Welcome to Look Back Laughs. Today on the show, we're going to be discussing Chris Rock with a dear friend of mine, a snowed-in comedy tour, brother of mine. You know him from a million television shows on Canadian television. And you know him from the snowed-in comedy tour all the way from Vancouver, British Columbia. It's Dan Quinn, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, Dan. Hey.
I figure what better guy to discuss Chris Rock than a kid from Northern Alberta? You know,
absolutely perfect.
Absolutely, from Northern Alberta.
A farm boy from Northern Alberta, of course. Chris Rock would be a major influence of yours. How are you? You're in your beautiful condominium in downtown Vancouver, British Columbia.
Yeah, I can kind of show off my view, and for the next, I don't know, the sun's setting right now.
Oh yeah, look at. You can actually see the harbor there. Hey.
Yeah. That's just what I wake up to every day. You know, no big deal.
NBD. Good for you. Yeah. Life is good in Vancouver. You're keeping safe in quarantine.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, life is, if it wasn't for the whole not working thing, it'd be pretty fantastic. In fact, I feel like if this was retirement, I've nailed it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm really good at this part of doing nothing.
Other than that, so you made one episode of your cooking show, and then possibly you'll be making more episodes. What else have you been doing with your time since we got shut down? You're golfing, right? You're a golfer. You're a golfer.
I've been golfing like it's a career. In fact, I have a friend who's a professional golfer, and he's like, "You work harder on this than professional golfers," because it's like the only thing I could get up. And I can just be like, well, I'm going to go to the range today. It's like a schedule thing. You know me, I love schedules of like,
you do.
Okay, then I do this and this. And that's also why it's been hard to do comedy, because that schedule of what the result would be is gone, right? Like I would write a joke and be like, okay, I'll try this on Wednesday, or I've got the show coming up. So I'd write for that and I could work for that. Yep. And now I was actually on the golf course talking to a guy. And he's like, are you writing jokes? And I'm like, no, because when I used to write jokes, it was like, oh, I'm going to do this. Now I'm just a guy with crazy ideas in a phone, but I'm never going to say these to anybody. Right? I'm just like, no, this is kind of interesting. And
the same story. Like you can write topical material, but by the time we get on stage to be able to do this, it's going to be old news. Like
April 2020 was wild, right, guys?
That's exactly
May of 2023 when we're back on stage again, you know? Yeah.
And that's the nature of stand-up.
That was a crazy election, you know? And then you're like, people are like, that's a year and a half ago. And I'm like, I know, but I didn't tell anybody this crazy joke I had. Yeah,
exactly. And that's where I think you and I are kind of the same cloth, is that we work well with a deadline. Like knowing that we have snowed-ins coming up January 3rd, they're kicking off the tour. I better have half an hour of theater quality, killer material ready to go. Otherwise, I'm going to let everybody down. And so, we work our ass off all year long. And now we're kind of thrown up in the air and quarantined and kind of lost and twisting in the wind, not knowing what our next show is going to be or when we're going to be able to resume the tour.
And how much of our show is all going to be about COVID jokes that's the only thing we'll have for stories in our life, is all of us will be like, well, COVID, let's talk about then. And like the fourth act on the show, people will be like, yeah, we get it. There was COVID that happened.
Yeah. So, that's also a beauty of the Snowed-In Comedy Tour. And those of you who don't know the tour, it's 4 international touring headlining comedians getting together, and we play these beautiful theaters all across Canada. And we start the tour in the West and we work our way east. So those first probably week, I guess, of shows, we kind of watch each other's act and go like, okay, you've got that joke. I'll take that one out of my act. You do this one. And, and then by, 4 or 5 shows in, we've got like a cohesive piece of theater that we can tour.
I love how you kind of let the cat out of the bag that the show is not very good the first week.
That's not true. No, I disagree.
It's a work in progress. Actually, we love it. We do a good job, but there's a lot of by the end of the week, we filtered out a little bit of like there's people like, oh wow, everybody had Trump jokes this year or something.
Well, exactly. I was just going to say, like that 1 year that we came back onto the tour after marijuana had been legalized in Canada, everybody had, everybody had a different angle on it. So that was also interesting. This is what it's going to be. So when we get back post-pandemic, it's going to be a lot of COVID jokes, and I'm sure everyone's going to have their own angle on it.
This joke is almost a year old now, but it still applies, about how I was writing a joke about because I always talk about my life, and I was writing a joke about how I have no new stories. And then finally I had a new story. Like, so my wife and I would be like, I go to tell her something. I'm like, oh, this happened. And she's like, yeah, I was there. So I don't even have anybody to tell if I do have something new happen. Like, it's just me going like, well, yeah, you're beside me at all times and I don't see anybody else. So I actually started telling her the story of me telling her the story and her going, yeah, I was there. So it became this like loopy thing. And I was like, I don't even know if I've told this story to the person I've told this story to. I'm like, this sucks.
And speaking of your comedy, today we're going to discuss one of your influences. Who are we going to discuss, Dan? Tell us who we're going to discuss on the show today.
Chris Rock.
So let's kick it off with Chris Rock. All right, Dan. So Chris Rock. What was it about? Well, where did you first see Chris Rock? Where do you have a memory of actually seeing him for the very first time?
Like I'd already started stand-up. I mean, he had done, I started stand-up in 93. And I think he did Big Ass Jokes in like 94 on HBO. And I'd seen him a little bit. I think he'd done Saturday Night Live already at this point. But I became a fan in Bring the Pain, which was 96. So I'm like 3 years into comedy. And I think still to this day, it's one of the best comedy albums of all time. The writing on it is phenomenal. The timing, his delivery, every part of it, he just nails.
Who was the comic that you saw like when you were a kid that made you go like, oh, I want to try that? Or do you have a memory of who inspired you to get on stage?
I think my first memory of guys that I thought were really funny was Richard Pryor. So now this is I know this is going to be a weird connection for people because I grew up on a farm in northern Alberta. My mom has 11 in her family, right? 9 sisters. And 2 of her sisters, northern Alberta white girls married black guys from Seattle. So we had all these black cousins that would come out every summer from the States. And for a kid from northern Alberta, like, Jojo and Charlene and all of them would come and they'd spend a few days at our farm. And was the greatest thing in the entire world. Like, it was so cool. I felt cool that I had these older black guys. And they got me into stand-up. And Eddie Murphy actually was probably... So I got an Eddie Murphy tape from my cousin Charlene, who was like 3 years older than me. And I'm like a 12-year-old, northern Alberta innocent farm boy. And they handed me this Eddie Murphy Delirious cassette. And I think they were kind of like, you got to listen to this. And I remember just like laughing so hard at it. And then also my favorite line from it was, and I don't even think I knew what it meant when I was like 12. This was my first like stand-up joke I remember really just like crying laughing at, was when he's talking about cheating on his girlfriend and he says always deny, and they're like, he's like, but I caught you, he did this, and he's like, all right, I fucked her, but I make love to you. And I don't know why, I just thought that was like the most ridiculous. I was like, he got out of that one, like realizing, no, that would never work. Like as a 12-year-old, I was like, he got out of it.
And it was also, you're a 12-year-old kid, like you have no reference to this at all.
Yeah, like I thought.
I get it because we discussed this in a previous episode. Eddie Murphy was a huge influence on me as well. And I came home after watching Delirious, and I was quoting all these jokes to my mom or whatever, and not having any reference to it at all. And then of course we loved it. Yeah, and it was one of those, I think every comic of our generation watched Eddie Murphy Delirious as a kid. And that was kind of like the seed that was planted that, hey, maybe this is something I want to pursue kind of thing. So you were actually doing stand-up, and then you saw Chris Rock performing.
I think I'd seen a little bit of him.
And then he's the guy.
And then when I saw Bring the Pain, I was like, wow. Like that was phenomenal. Like just right from the beginning. He comes on stage and it's like so few wasted words, and he's in the joke, and he turns the audience like I don't know how well you know that special, but he starts out and he's like Washington D.C. and the whole crowd cheers.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's like home of the Million Man March, crowd cheers. And then he goes, all the positive black leaders were there. Farrakhan was there. Can't remember who else. Reggie Jackson was there, and Marion Barry, and the crowd boos. So he goes from like cheer, 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 boos. He's like, even on our finest hour, we had a crackhead on stage, and they kind of boo, cheer, and then he just gets into it. It's like he's got the audience edgy, and I was like this is like 6 lines in, and he's just like owning that stage, challenging the audience, going after them, and it was probably mostly an African-American audience, right? And he kind of like, if you know that special, he kind of like compliments them and then calls them out too. And it was like really ballsy, like on the edge, but his jokes were so sharp and just bang, bang, bang. I was like watching that. I was like, wow.
Just one thing that I want to correct at the beginning. Like you said that Reggie Jackson was there, and I think you meant to say Jesse Jackson.
Jesse Jackson. I was trying
okay, good.
Yeah.
okay. Because that was the little speed bump in there. I'm like, why would Reggie Jackson be referenced to Jesse Jackson?
He was there, though.
Okay,
I mean,
good.
Mr. October would be amazing.
He could have been there.
He probably was. It was a big moment. You know, so
there was a million. There was a million. So
who knows? There's probably a lot of people there. Obama might have even been there. Who knows? Back then, like
he could have.
Who knows?
So that you watched Bring the Pain, and do you feel like that influenced your comedy? Do you think that that brought your comedy to a new level, or it made you want to pursue comedy in a different angle?
It made me want to. I don't know if I ever kind of got to what he did, you know, like I would try to be a bit like Idris, but the problem was like, you know, I was very young and looked young. I mean, to pull off the material that Chris Rock kind of did, he had a real authority about him, even though he was probably only 20. No, I think he's about 32 at this point, which is still relatively young, but he had a real authority and really owned it. And to do that sort of stuff, like I there's things I took from that too, understanding of his setups and his punchlines. He also would repeat certain things, and he was very good at repeating. And I think I did a few jokes over the years where I would kind of repeat a setup and then go back into the punchline.
Okay.
Things like that were just kind of like, okay, that's Chris Rock. And also being okay with like really kind of projecting too on stage. Because he really...
That's, I would agree. Yeah. I could see that influence in your comedy. Absolutely. One thing that Chris Rock could always do is just cement what the premise is going to be. Be like, you know, Michael Jackson. Right. Michael Jackson. Like he would say, like, this is who I'm going to be talking about now. And just in the cadence of him setting up the joke, you're already, okay, where's this going? I'm ready. Here we go.
And then, I mean, that same album is the O.J. Simpson trial, right? Where he kind of like, you know, and then he was very good. I mean, I've never been able to do this, or it didn't feel right for me to do it, was even like using the same punchline, get to a point, like in that one he does like the O.J. Simpson, he's like, I'm not saying I would have killed it, but I understand. And then he kept doing like, and then he would build a new scenario, and then he would do the same thing, and then each point he built, that the punchline itself became so much better. Like, I'm not saying I would have killed her, but I understand, you know?
Yeah. So his punchline became a callback.
Right. Within like like 2 or 3 lines later, not like a callback to a joke, you know, 4 or 5 minutes later of like, you know, he's just building up the scenario. Here's the punchline. Building up the scenario. Here's the punchline. And it's really clever.
I mean, it's funny to think back, like that was 96, you said. And since then, I mean, here we are in 2021 as we're recording this or whatever. He's still out there selling theaters and working. If you follow him on social media, like you see that, like, I mean, pre-pandemic, he was at the Comedy Store. He was at the Comedy Cellar every night. Working on stuff.
I got to see him at the Comedy Cellar.
He's still got the work ethic. Yeah,
I saw him at the Comedy Cellar.
Yeah, great. Wow.
Working out stuff. I think it was for his special in like maybe 04-ish. I can't remember which one. When he's talking about got to keep his daughter off the pole. So I actually got to watch him work live at the Comedy Cellar, And I was in New York doing shows, and I went down to the Comedy Cellar. I wasn't on the show, and I just wanted to watch. And then he came on, with all these legal notepads. So he had like
wow.
I think there was a piano or something, or maybe a stool on the stage. I don't know if his piano was there, but a big stool. And he had all these like tons of like legal notepads, and he kind of spread them out. And it was really interesting. So he would come on, and it was really interesting to watch. And I tried to take some of this when I worked on new bits in small rooms, is whenever he had a new bit, so he'd look at the page and like, okay, I'm going to do this bit. And you could see it's like he's maybe done it once or twice before. And so he'd look at the bit and he'd kind of lean back, and then he would just talk through the bit. There was no Chris Rockisms at all. He was just talking like this, and he'd be like,
okay,
thing about, everybody hates the U.S. because we're number one. Like you hate the Yankees, right? In baseball, nobody ever hates the Montreal Expos. And he would just do it like that, right? And you're like, okay. So he was trying to listen to see if there's a rhythm and a timing there, because I think he knew he was Chris Rock. If he just got on stage and goes, everybody hates the U.S. No, but all of a sudden his rhythm is going to get laughs. But he wanted to know.
Yeah, people would be going crazy because it's Chris Rock on stage selling the hell out of a joke that might not be ready to be a Chris Rock joke.
It might be terrible. Like, the thing about mayonnaise is it's really white. People are like, it is white. And
oh my God, it's amazing. Yeah.
More
so
truth.
Instead, he's just on stage, like I can relate on that too, because I'll write a bit and then I'll go off to like the worst mics around the country and work on these jokes, and because there's no stakes to it, right? It's just, maybe 4 audience members and 8 comics who are waiting their turn to come up on stage kind of thing. And I love that, because I just want to say these jokes out loud to see if there is something there that I can build a chunk on.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting that Chris Rock does that same thing, but at the Comedy Cellar in New York City.
Which is to him,
like hollowed ground of the,
And exactly, to him, the Comedy Cellar is your worst open mic. Right? Like,
that's right.
You're going like, there's 5 people here, and this is, I don't know. And if I even want to go on, and Chris Rock's like, the Comedy Cellar's only got 130. Like, I'm used to 3,000. This kind of sucks, right?
Yeah.
So, and then it was really interesting. So he did that for like 40 minutes or so, right? And he would grab it and flip through his legal page, and sometimes he just like, it was like, and it wasn't getting like big laughs. It would be like sort of things, and then he just kind of put the notepads away and kind of went, all right, I'm Chris Rock. And then he was like, you got to keep your daughter at the pool. And it was like, boom, 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 boom for 7 minutes. Sold the hell out of polished material, which wasn't material he'd done on TV yet, but obviously stuff that he was like, okay, I know how this goes, know how it works. And then was like, boom, good night, everybody. And everybody's going crazy, of course, right?
Brilliant.
And I was like, I learned from that.
This is advice that I tell young comics too. Like, start with something that you know is going to work, win the audience over, and then try new stuff in the middle, and then close well. Because that's the bookends that everyone wants to remember. Like, you want to get them on your side, and then end with a crescendo so that they're like, oh my God, that was a great show. But at our level, we have to win an audience over, right? Like Chris Rock can just go up there and just like, well, here's a bunch of stuff I'm going to work on. They're going to be like raptured with him. And then, of course, he's a pro, so he pulls out some smash hits at the end to round out the show. Brilliant. That's great. I hadn't heard that story, and that's so inspiring.
So if I want to build 25, I got to be doing all new as much as I can, as many times as I can, because then, like me and you, I write very similarly, where we overwrite, cut back, add. It's like this growing and shrinking jokes all the time, right? I do start a joke and it's no, those parts, get rid of those. And then all of a sudden this gets tight. And then I'm like, well, I can keep expanding from here, right? So
then you've got new angles on it. It's the whittling down of the economy of words. One of the things that you admired about Chris Rock is that there's no wasted words. There's he's got, he repeats things, but with
intention,
purpose. And then it's the economy. There's absolute intention with the repeating. But the economy of words, and then as you're on stage, you're like, oh, wait a second, I hadn't thought of this angle on it, and then you kind of go down that avenue, and then it kind of like tree branches out, and then all of a sudden you've got like a solid 7 minutes on, going to the grocery store, or whatever that you originally started out talking about. and then you could turn to your wife and then say, and she's like, yeah, I was right there.
Remember when I went to the grocery store? Yeah, I was with you.
Yeah, I was right there.
With you. Like, that's not a...
See, that's the beginning. I bet you'll be doing that at Snowed In 2022.
Yeah, I hope so.
Have you ever got to meet Chris Rock? That's a question. Did you ever get to meet him when you were at the Cellar?
No, but when I was living in LA in 2005, I ended up being good friends with his brother Tony Rock, who's a really good comedian himself, and we actually hung out quite a bit. And one time when because Chris lived in New York, so didn't really cross paths, but he came to town to host the the Academy Awards in 2005, and so I ended up meeting a bunch of his other brothers and stuff.
Did he stay at Tony's place? Like he crashed on the couch?
Well, no, I think they probably put him up. After him.
They put him up. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised actually if he has a house in LA too. I can't remember, or he might have been staying at the Mondrian. Just off the strip. It was one of those two because they were talking about it and Chris was in town. It was a big deal because he was kind of, got his brothers out and was taking them shopping and, hey, let's go here and dropping. They all had brand new shoes that day. And
that's cool.
Like things like that. It was, pretty fun for all of them when, Chris, the big celebrities, come through town. So I really wish I would have. I mean, Tony was an awesome dude and really fun to be friends with. And I think, and from what I understand is that him and Chris didn't talk about stand-up. They're both stand-ups. And the younger brother is now a stand-up that I met and hung out with a bit at the time. He was really wanted to be a stand-up, but they just talked about sports all the time. They never really talked. They were like big sports fans, and that was more the connection. They didn't want to talk about jokes, Well,
and the really same cool. Same with us in the Snowed In comedy tour. Like we're driving around in the van and we're going from gig to gig to city to city. Yeah. We're rarely talking about stand-up. We're talking about the Canucks and we're talking about the upcoming baseball season and movies and so that's another great reason to do this show is that, I have never talked to you about stand-up and how you got into comedy and who inspired you. And that's what the show is all about. So that was great. That was a very thorough and look back at almost a very specific era of Chris Rock. Mm-hmm. I think we could do probably 3 more episodes on Chris Rock, just like in the 90s alone.
Right.
But that was great and influential and inspiring, and he still influences us today. I look forward to his next special and what he's got planned next. It's also been fun chatting with you, Dan, to watch the sunset behind you as we discuss Chris Rock in your beautiful home in downtown Vancouver. We started off with a little bit of dusk, and now it's full dark. So
that's the way the sun works. I don't want to throw it down for the flat earthers out there, but when the sun goes behind, it really. I don't know if you had flat earthers following you, but that's how it works when you got a rounded globe.
Flat earthers haven't figured out YouTube yet. Well, that's great. That's been a great look back on the one quick short little era of Chris Rock. Maybe we'll do this again down the road, Dan. We'll discuss Chris Rock in the 2000s and maybe get into his movies and Saturday Night Live.
Maybe like Fargo. Who knows? He's done all. He's done a lot of stuff actually.
He was on Saturday Night Live when I was going to tapings all the time. So that's where I first got to see him was on SNL and Nat X, and then he moved on to In Living Color. And there's so much that we can discuss about Chris Rock, and maybe we'll do it in a future episode. Career. Yeah, absolutely.
Really one of the all-time great stand-up comedians. Like
absolutely.
I've actually seen him live as well in at the Orpheum in Vancouver in front of 3,000 people.
Oh, amazing! Amazing. Well, someday the Snowed In Comedy Tour will make it to the Orpheum, and
he'll ask you a guest spot, and we'll be like, yeah.
Send us a tape.
I know you're in town filming a movie, but.
I don't know. Maybe your brother Tony could do a set, but
Tony. Well, Tony won't steal the stage from us. He'll be funny, but.
Tony's got some new shoes. He wants to get on stage. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Dan. Is there anything that you would like to promote? Tell people where they can see you. Obviously, it's
in 2022 we'll be doing a little thing called the Snowed In Comedy Tour. Hopefully, again.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
For my second episode of my cooking show, Dan Quinn Tries a Recipe.
Please do it. Please continue on with that your cooking show. It was a fun watch, and I would really encourage you to keep shooting them because it was fun. It's and it's a good little creative project outside of working on your putt or your drive or whatever you're doing at the golf range.
Well, and also that's golf. I've been like decided I'm going to get better at golf this year, and I put everything into it, and I went like this much better. You know what I mean? Well, like you couldn't even tell. Like, you know, you're like, oh, that's a lot.
I did the same thing with snowboarding, but I got this much better, buddy. Like, I'm full on snowboarding now. So we hit the mountain for the last time yesterday, and it was icy. And I finally learned what you guys always say, like, it's not really good conditions today. And as a skier, I'd be like, this is great. Come on, what's going on? Let's hit the mountain. Now it's like, I get it. This is hard work now.
Snowboards need snow, where skis can be on ice, and you could rip it. Like if you were putting on your skis that day. So maybe on the tour, bring both, and then you can always every day be like, "This is the greatest thing ever." What are you complaining about?
That's more gear to haul in the truck. Forget it, man. There's no way. I'm going all snowboard next tour. All snowboarding all the time.
All right. Awesome. All right. Looking forward to it. Thank you very much for having me, man. It's always fun chatting with you. Pretty
absolutely.
Easy. So easy.
We'll put all the socials on the link below, and tell people to go check out the snowedincomedytour.com and follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a thumbs up on all the socials. Thanks so much, Dan. Be well. Give Susie Q a big hug for me, and love you, brother. Hope to see you very soon. Okay.
Yeah, I love you too, man. Let's get back to working.
Let's do it.
All right. Bye.
See you, bud. Hey, thanks for watching all the way to the end, guys. Much appreciated. If you want to check out some more videos, we're going to post them up over my shoulders here. And give it a like and a subscribe if you haven't already. It helps out so much. Good night, everybody.